This is the practice of cleaning the slate.
Jig is up, jury's out. I passed away before I figure out who to trust.
Welcome back to The False Narrative. I am BigIrrelevant along with Kregbot45. Welcome to episode 2, which is something rare, I think, on my channel. I don't normally get to episode 2 on things. We're going to follow a little bit today. We're going to get into overreactions and a few notes that we had from the beginning of the season after our predictions episode. If you have not watched that, we are going to refer to a lot of things that happened as well as the context for what this episode and what this show looks like. If you don't recall, I know we didn't get a whole lot of viewership on the first one, but that's okay. I'm not a basketball guy on YouTube. Yeah. I'm not a basketball guy on YouTube. So today we're going to get into some stuff. We're going to, introduce some more narratives, track and keep accountable to those things, and talk about some of our predictions that we don't think are correct. Some of the things that have happened early on in the season that we believe is moving in both the positive ways and the negative ways. I think we both have some takes that I guess some that are really cold and then some that are hot. It's just depending on what the take is for us. So to start, before we get into our overreactions, I want to talk about one thing that I noticed earlier on. I think this happened around the first week of the season. I can't remember exactly which game or which day this game happened, but one thing I want to talk about, because it's going to be the elephant in the room all season, is going to be all of these gambling and the prop bets and everything and the spreads that we're going to be following all season. We're dealing with the Chauncey Billups, the Terry Rozier. I still think there's more probably about Malik Beasley that we're going to be learning about
Who
too.
knows about Damon Jones and his, alliance with LeBron.
There's a lot of things that are going to still keep coming up. And while there's a lot of drama, you can get into that investment of talking about every single situation. What we want to do is we just want to track it, because I don't think either of us believe this is over. And one event that happened earlier on in the season so far that already looks sketchy is there was a game between the Nets and the Spurs where Coach Jordi Fernandez got called for a technical foul with 3 seconds left when the Spurs were already up in this game by 10. Now, importantly, the spread was 10.5. So that technical gave them free throws, which then moved the spread. There's 3 seconds left in the game. Mm-hmm. This game is over. So we're not going to be directly accusing Jordi Fernandez in this situation, but it's something that I want to make sure that we are keeping track of. There are going to be a lot more of these types of events throughout the season where there is something really strange happening. This could possibly be justified as just arguing with a ref that happened to go wrong. It's just weirdly coincidental that it happened exactly within the spread lines. Mm-hmm. And also, can't you wait 3 seconds to finish this argument?
Yeah, or why did the ref need to call a tech when the game was out of reach? I mean, there's 3 seconds left. It's not like you're setting a tone for the rest of the half or whatnot. Definitely an interesting case, especially as you said, right across the gambling line. Maybe 3 years ago, we just call it a bad beat, if you will, in the gambling community. But given everything that's happened so far this season, as we, aforementioned with Chauncey, with Damon Jones, et cetera, it's something that now smells a little fishy in comparison to if this happened last year, 2 years ago.
And this isn't like, I'm not a gambler. I don't do any of that. I don't put money on games. I don't look at the spreads very often. So this is not something I have really kept a close eye on. But now I feel like we have to, because now there's a lot of integrity questions being brought up. And we don't know if it was the coach. We don't know if it was somebody on the bench that told him to get in a fight. We don't know if it was the ref, or there could have been nothing entirely. There could be nothing there. This is a weird situation. And like we said, there's going to be a lot of other places where, even with the whole Chauncey Billups situation, when he did it, one of the accused situations was where he benched somebody without, he benched Damian Lillard on this game against the Bulls in 2023 without telling anybody except for the bettors, which is why they bet lowers and bet against them knowing they were tanking. That could be happening too. That is going to be harder for us to notice, but maybe we look at some sketchy last minute resting situations and whether, this isn't something we're going to know information about, but we have to kind of get that information out. I mean, we could even say how many so far have we had where it's a last minute, oh, that guy's not playing? Mm-hmm. Why? Already Giannis, I think that was 30 minutes before the game.
Yeah.
Before the Warriors game. That was weird. In that one, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, because as people know, I am a huge Bucks fan, and that kind of irked me a little bit in that one. So But anyways, just a quick note, something we're going to be taking a look at throughout the season, following and noting anything that we see that's a little fishy throughout this season. I want to make sure that you guys are also noticing it as well while you're watching. So, okay. You want to get into our overreactions? How we start off our
Let's do
season?
it. We're what, 10 days, 11 days into the season so far, and the Bulls and the Sixers are leading the East just as we anticipated, you know?
Yep, that was 100% my top of my Eastern Conference, and not my plan. Like, no, I didn't know the top of the Eastern Conference was for the play-in tournament, but I guess it is. That was, that's been surprising, and then even in the West, I feel like there's a little bit of a different thing. We kind of knew that Thunder were going to be really good, but Spurs are also at the top of that list, and there's some teams that have looked better or worse than their records. I mean, so far, I I guess like looking at so far, Chicago's a good example. I really haven't watched any of Chicago because I know this is an early season like jump to them. This happens. We had as you've mentioned before, the Wizards did this a couple.
Oh, yeah. Montrezl Harrell MVP, baby.
Jumped out way ahead that a couple seasons ago. This happens early on in the season every once in a while, but there's some still positive things to take from the Bulls, and they've looked good defensively, they've looked good offensively, and they're actually playing well together. And the East just hasn't really looked that good outside of a few teams, so it's definitely something there. And Philly, I mean, we can talk about Philly because Philly has 100% looked way better than I think we expected.
Oh, 1,000%, Dan. We'll talk more about that as we get throughout the pod. Touching on Chicago, I mean, having the 5th best offensive rating in the entire league, having the 7th best defensive rating, I believe it's the 6th best net rating. It's just something I didn't necessarily anticipate. I think we've seen leaps from Buzelis, we've seen leaps from Giddey, and their rookie this year, Noah Segway, hasn't even played all that much, I don't think. So he's another guy they can throw into that lineup. Vucevic is almost leading the entire Eastern Conference in rebounding as well. We knew Billy Donovan was a good coach. And what's weird is we saw the Bulls kind of put together a little bit of a push last season in their last 20 games, similar to what the Blazers did out west. The difference was we kind of expected the Blazers to be able to carry that over, where we kind of thought for the Bulls it was more so just, hey, they were pushing for the play and they had something to play for. Let's see if they can bring it the next season. And obviously, Big and I did not think they're going to bring it the next season, but by all accounts, they're a top 6 or 7 team in the league, at least so far to start this season.
Yeah, I mean, organizational dysfunction has always kind of put us in the position that we know that they're never going to work in their best favor, but they kept this team together from last year, and honestly, it's playing way better than we expected. Giddey has been really good to start off this year, and he did have a big jump after they got rid of Zach LaVine last year. I know he jumped up in his efficiency way better. Like, he was almost unplayable, especially defensively for the first half of the season. And there's always the big pivotal moment of watching that the half quarter that he hit on the Lakers last year that kind of turned the tides of the Bulls season from being a team that was going to pick top 10 to not pick top 10.
And
so it might not have helped them.
He's currently betting favorite for most improved player, which is something that I don't think anyone would have bet that preseason, just given the fact that he's been in the league for a long time now. And we kind of expected that we know who Josh Giddey was, but he's moved up from about 7th or 8th in preseason rankings for potential favorites for most improved player to now favorites at plus 900 ahead of Ryan Rollins and Denny Abdia.
And I would say too, I mean, from the ball knowers perspective, we did kind of see that in the latter half of the season. So the question was whether or not there was going to be a trajectory upwards, or whether or not he was going to be in this position where he was going to stay stagnant to where he ended last season. And so far, it's looked like that trajectory has continued to move upwards, which is amazing for the Chicago Bulls, because if you've got a guy like that, I know they didn't pay him. I can't remember what he got paid, because he got paid really late in the offseason. I don't even know if he got anything outside the qualifying offer. I'm going to double check his contract, because I don't believe he ended up getting a whole lot of money.
September 9th, 4 years, $100 million.
Oh, never mind. Okay, so they did pay him. I mean, that's not a huge contract. That could end up being really valuable if he does play at this level for an extended period of time. It'll be an interesting thing to continue to watch, because Giddey has been somebody who, like we said at the beginning of last year, was completely unplayable. Like, you couldn't have him out on the court. He was so much of a defensive liability, and right now he looks like a good player. Like
Mhm.
he actually looks like a good NBA player. I don't know if he's ever going to be the guy where you'd say this is who we're building around
Mhm.
in Chicago, but like, hey, maybe we're wrong on that. Maybe his playmaking skill will continue to develop, and
Yeah.
defensively he'll continue to develop, and it won't matter.
And we got to remember too, this is his 4th season in the league. He's been in the league 3 years now. He's still only 23 years old. He actually just turned 23 at the start of this season. So he'll be 23 this entire year. He won't even be 24 until the start of the next preseason. He's averaging 22, 9, and 8. I mean, if he can figure out the defensive side of the ball, which he has been to start, I don't see why we can't compare him to a Jason Kidd type when he's averaging this. He's a 6, 7 point guard ball handler. It's been tremendous to see it. And I think the poor PR that he had at the end of the Oklahoma City debacle ended up kind of making people forget and murky the waters of what we expected Josh Giddey to be, which was the guy who can rebound at his height being a guard, who can still score at an efficient rate, although he hasn't been the most efficient person this year to start, still an increase from what he was last year, but then also an obviously great facilitator as well. I think I'm more surprised with his rebounding totals being over 9, or it's 8.8 right now, than I am his assist total. But to Big's point as well, the defense as well, he's looked like somebody who you can put, maybe not put on your best defender, but you no longer have to hide him on defense.
Yeah, and I'd say especially that I like the Jason Kidd comp, but that's where I'd also bring that back to. It's a question of Jason Kidd needed a lot of players around him in order
Mhm.
to succeed. We need to see a little bit more growth from Kobe White. I think Io. Like
Mhm.
there was a lot of questions of whether or not they've got a lot of guards
Mhm.
in Chicago, whether or not they trade some of these pieces. Right now, if these guys continue to develop, I don't see you trading them. Maybe there's a trade, like one or two of them to get something else.
Mhm.
But if this team continues to play at this level, and Billy Donovan is a fantastic, I mean, Hall of Fame now,
Mhm.
head coach, like you could really build something there. And I think even with the rebounding thing you just
Mhm.
mentioned, Vucevic is like leading the league in rebounds,
Mhm.
and you still have Giddy being this dominant at grabbing boards, which just means they're moving the ball faster and
Yeah.
faster, and they've got a pretty quick pace in Chicago.
And Kobe White, to your point, I don't even, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's played yet this season. I know he's injured right now. I believe he hasn't even touched the floor. So I wonder if this is one of those scenarios where it's like, shoot, do we bring this guy back and do we kind of mess up what's going on? The Bulls are undefeated. Giddy's playing fantastic. Who's going to lose minutes if he does come back? Or is it a point where, hey, Kobe White's a guy we could potentially trade? He's not that much older. I believe he was in the 2020, he might have been in the 2021 draft as well with Giddy. I'll have to check into that real quick. But
He
that could
was,
be,
he was in the same draft as Cam Johnson. I can't remember which draft that was right now off the top of my head. Was that 2019? I think.
Kobe
Because
White. It was
do you remember
2019. Yep.
yeah, because there was the interview where Cam Johnson got picked, and he was like, "Whoa," because they were teammates
Mhm.
in college, and he
I
was like, "There's
remember
no
that.
reason Johnson should have got drafted that high," which is
Yeah.
funny because Cam Johnson has been a pretty successful NBA player so far, but it was just
And
that's how I remember when he got drafted.
Kobe White will be turning 26 in February. Him and I share the same birthday, actually. Same name and same birthday. Did you know Kobe White's name is Alec?
I did not. I did not
His
know.
his name is Alec Jacoby White, and we have the same birthday. He's a year younger than me. He goes by Kobe because he's a basketball player. So Alec Jacoby White. They started calling him Kobe when he was playing basketball. Obviously spelled Coby. But yeah, Alec Jacoby White.
All right, I guess new favorite player for you right
Yeah.
there. You need him on the Wizards.
Oh my
Actually, you
goodness.
don't need him on the Wizards.
We need a
You
point
don't need him on
guard.
the
So
Wizards. I don't know if you need that many guards, though. I think, like, I don't know if he's much of a point
that's
as much
fair.
as he is a two score first guard. I'm actually going to take that Jason Kidd thing as a tangent to overreaction that I have, because Jason Kidd recently had a quote where he said, "Our offense is right where we need it to be," which is ranked 30th out of 30 teams. The Dallas Mavericks are awful. Like they look terrible offensively. Part of this is we know Kyrie Irving is out right now. And they tried Cooper Flag at point for one game, and then that didn't work. So they were like, all right, never mind. We're gonna go back to D'Angelo Russell. They look bad. And the other person, they brought him in for defense, and I was hoping that he would get a lot of play. Anthony Davis does not look like Anthony Davis.
No, he's actually injured again as well.
Okay, so never mind. So he looks exactly like Anthony Davis, just a little bit heavier. Like This team, I was expecting a lot more just because knowing the defensive ability that they have on this roster.
Mm-hmm.
And they are 8th in defense.
Mm-hmm.
So let's not act like they're not great defensively. But offensively, it's terrible. They need Kyrie so badly. And I don't know what his timetable is for return. I don't know if they're getting him back. When do they expect him? Like,
maybe at the earliest March. If not March, April, like he might be back for the last 10 to 12 games of the season. But if it's at a point where they're, I don't want to say tanking.
I thought that it would be a little earlier.
It could be. ACLs typically are a little bit quicker now, just given modern medicine. But even then, I mean, if let's say it's March 1st and you have 20 wins, you're 20-35. What's the point of bringing him back for that final 30-game push?
Yeah, especially in the Western Conference. But that's one where I got to go back to my original takes that I had at the beginning of the season. Was I had them in the playoffs thinking that the defense was going to be good enough. I think that you'd bring Kyrie back early because of this. And yeah, the defense has been great, but offensively they're so bad that my overreaction, I guess, for this part of the season is I don't see Dallas. I don't see Dallas making the playoffs with how poorly they've looked. They could obviously turn it around. It's really early, but I'm just saying right now, as an overreaction, any take that I had regarding the Dallas Mavericks, I no longer believe in right now. So, AD for DPOY? No. Jaden Hardy for 6th man of the year? No. Like, we'll even talk about it too. I don't even know. We do say that wins have some contributing factor to Rookie of the Year, and Cooper Flag. I mean, he's still the favorite, and he has looked good, but there's a lot of other guys who've looked really good too. So,
and I think it's something to note before we move off the Mavericks. They do own full outright their own 2026 first round pick. They don't own the 2027 pick. I believe that was the first that went to or no, did they acquire a first in the Luka trade from the Lakers? Yes, they got the 2029 Lakers first. So I'm not sure where their 2027 first, but I'm looking at it right now. I say all that to say this: if there is a year where they're like, hey, we might as well just wrap up shop early, this would be the year, because they will not have a draft pick in 2027, which I think adds to the validity of, if they are in a poor spot by the time Kyrie Irving's back and healthy, they're just like, hey dude, take it easy, let's just make sure you're back fully healthy for 2027, because we will have to be good then, since we don't own our pick.
Dallas's 2027 draft pick, I want to say they traded that. They traded that to Charlotte.
Oh, for PJ Washington, maybe.
Yeah, that was the PJ Washington trade. So, it's got a protection, but it is it's only a top 2 protected. So, if they could get that pick back, so it's okay. They might actually get that pick back based on the protections there in that trade. But yeah, it's definitely, this could be another year where they say, let's go get a top guy, which we'll have. It's too early to say, because college basketball isn't really started yet or anything either. But this is a pretty good class, so there's a lot of weight in saying, hey, maybe we do, say, yeah, we're not good enough this year. The problem is Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving are both they're not young, and they haven't also been regularly healthy. So it's not like you're talking about guys that we have to, you can conserve their bodies, but are they going to last that much longer? I don't know. It's an interesting situation. I think with this team, they offensively have looked really rough, and AD does not look like Anthony Davis. So that's I guess with the Mavs right now for me. So that's my overreaction on that team.
I want to talk about the Jazz next, honestly. I think that's an interesting overreaction. Utah currently in the standings. They might not be anything crazy. They're 2-3 at the moment. But if we go and we look at their actual net ratings here, Utah's a lot better than expected. They're 15th in the league in overall net rating. They have a 117 offensive rating as well, which actually puts them 9th in the league in offense. A lot of that on the backs of Lauri Markkanen. Their defensive rating, not the greatest, 22nd. But I still think if you had to tell me at the beginning of the year, where would the Jazz be in defensive rating, I would not have them 22nd. And all this with Ace Bailey, who might be their second or third best offensive player, not living up to what we thought he could be as immediate. Granted, there's always going to be a learning curve here, but he's looked worse.
And he was sick. He was sick to start the season, which did mean that that he did have a little bit of a limited thing. That was something that in the first episode we didn't mention. But that was why he was a little bit more limited.
Okay.
I forgot to mention that when we talked about him, and that was a little bit of a limitation. But now that he is fine, we can just, if you throw out those first 3 games, he's still been decent, just
Yeah.
not as big of a role as we thought.
And I know in the first episode we talked about Lauri Markkanen potentially being a guy that would be like the hottest commodity in the trade market. But if the Jazz end up being a 500-ish team, or even like 35 and 47, somewhere in that range, maybe they don't move off Lauri and they're just like, hey, let's keep him. Let's see if we can go get somebody. We know the Jazz and Danny Ainge are very savvy when it comes to whether it's acquiring picks, moving assets around, bringing people in. So this team, I'm not saying they're going to be a buyer at the deadline, but it could be a hold or a check if we're playing poker, see exactly what we have, because they are better than I expected, unlike a team like New Orleans, who, while I didn't think was going to be great, they have looked like the worst team in the league by far and away. Maybe outside of the Nets, but at least the worst team in the Western Conference far and away.
I think the only thing that I'd push back on the Lauri thing is like the Jazz traded away Donovan Mitchell. Like they traded away Danny Ainge, traded away Donovan Mitchell, and that was a young player who was very, very good. And he's been really good since then. I think Ainge is a lot in the market of trying to get the most for the asset, kind of in the old Sam Hinkie mold. And he's been doing that more and more, and he loves his draft picks.
Yep.
And if Markkanen continues to play for this level, we talked about him being more of like a, one pick plus a young player type thing. And he's looking like a lot more than that right now. It's a big contract, but that also makes his contract very malleable to be able to trade. Now, the question is, if you do trade him, how much does he fall off? And how much do the Jazz fall off? Look, I gave them 12 wins. You gave them 14 wins. I think that there's a good chance that both of us are wrong in that market, because I don't think Markkanen would get traded until, the trade of the off season's the January 15th date, like that, when that date starts to cross, that's probably when you would see him start to get moved, around then. Agreed. Or the deadline. And yeah, if the Jazz lose 30 straight games afterwards, maybe, but that's not going to happen. Will Hardy looks pretty good as a coach right now, and Markkanen's playing really well. So the Jazz are definitely overperforming. Whereas, as you said, with the Pelicans, look, with the Pelicans, there's a big question to me, which is, how do you, as an organization, well, I guess, okay, let's say as a team first. We can go to Dumars and the organization in a second. But as a team, have so many talented players that seem to work well together, that should theoretically work well together. Herb Jones is a fantastic perimeter defensive player who can score a little bit, but is the perfect role player. Trey Murphy is a fantastic scorer, 3-point shooter, 3-level scorer, who should be able to malleably work with anybody. And Zion is one of the best players that we have seen when he is healthy and on the court. How can these 3 guys not work together? And lead to winning? I don't understand. I like, they have the traits of, if this was a better run organization, and maybe that's it. Maybe Zion is the problem in this case, and you have to say, we need to build on something else. Or if I'm any organization right now, if I'm any other team, I'm calling the Pelicans. What do you want for Herb Jones? What do you want for Trey Murphy? I don't know if I want Zion, but if I can get him for cheaper value, I might do it, because
and then their backs
they've
are,
got it.
their backs are against
Dumars
a
at the helm.
Their backs are against a wall, mainly because they don't have their first round pick this year. We know that was part of the Derek Queen trade with the Hawks.
And he has looked good. He has looked good. So Derek Queen has looked good.
I've been surprised with Jeremiah Fears, a guy who shot 28% from deep in college as well. He's been shooting well. He's been getting fourth quarter minutes as well over Jordan Poole on some nights. But this is not just a tire fire. This is like the entire dump is on fire here. They are, I believe, 28th in the league in offensive rating. They are 29th in defensive rating, but they have the worst net rating. They are minus 16 on net rating here. And like you said, they have their backs against a wall, but they do have some very good players. So I agree with you. I would be calling the Pelicans and say, hey, look, you might not want to move these guys, but if you don't, your job's probably gone. And I would sell it that way too. Of like, you can get yourself fired, or you can try to make a move to potentially save your career, Joe Dumars.
That's where it's at. The best teams often find the worst run organizations and just pillage them.
Mhm.
And the Pelicans this offseason, I guess we could say last offseason, started with their own draft pick as well as the Pacers draft pick.
Mhm.
And those two picks could be top 5 picks.
Mhm.
And you traded both of them away. And your team did not get better after those trades. So it's a question mark in like who is going to get the fleece of the century and why is it going to be the Los Angeles Lakers? But like, if at the end of the season somebody doesn't have Trey Murphy on their roster that's not the Pelicans or Herb Jones, then I think that some of these GMs got to look at the trading mechanisms and how the cap works. If those trades don't happen, because somebody is going to call the Pelicans and just fleece this team, because these players, as you said, Fears has looked good. Herb Jones, we know is a good player. Trey Murphy, we know is a good player. Zion, we know is a good player. Derek Queen has looked good. Yet this team is awful. So it's something there, and it's not like they're it's just it is a small sample size. We will say that. And they're not there's a couple other teams that have looked horrible to start off the season. We talked about the Nets too. Another team, the Raptors, have looked so bad defensively. They they can't rebound either. That like, there are a few questions there too. There are a couple teams that are really, really bad that also have a lot of assets. If I transition to Toronto in that conversation, you've got a lot of guys who should supposedly be able to score, and their offense doesn't look great, and their defense straight up awful, like just bad. So
we talked about
maybe
Indiana as well. You mentioned the Pelicans had the Indiana pick. I think that totally changed the trajectory of the Pacers' plan this season, given that they now have their own first-round pick. I mean, they're 1-5 at the moment. They're ranked 26th in the league in net rating as well. I think they're going to be a team that is content with going and trying to get one of those top 5 guys in this class, because this is maybe one of the best classes we've seen in the last few years. I know last year we talked about how great the Cooper Flag class was going to be, but I think that was more so in comparison to what we saw in 2023, where Zachary Risachet was the first overall pick, and it's like, oh, we're getting a 3-and-D guy at the first overall pick who would be ninth in any other draft class. But this one truly has the chance to be a 2013, has the chance to be even 2018 with Luka, Trey, Ayton, et cetera, this 2025 class that's coming up. So I think the Pacers are another team that, while we were going to talk about kind of gap year, I think we have 2 teams that are taking a gap year that are going in the totally different direction. The Pacers being one where they are believing like, hey, we know how good we are. We've made 2 straight conference finals. Our guys healing. Let's go get one more player here and then make a run in 2026. Where the other team who we thought was going to be taking a gap year, the Boston Celtics, currently 3-4, ranked 12th in net rating as well. They might be in the boat of, hey, let's see if we can stay at 500 come the All-Star break. Tatum looks like he could be back from injury a lot sooner than expected. And let's go make the playoffs. And once we have our guys come April, all we got to do is get in. And I think that's true. Joe Mazzulla is one of the better coaches in the entire league, and he's progressed as a coach tremendously, not just in the X's and O's, but in the leadership and being able to have his guys really bought in and ready. And I wouldn't be surprised if this is a team that either somehow clears the play-in and gets that 6th seed, or even just in the play-in. We know that in a 1-game punch-out that the Jays, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, are as good as any duo in the league. Anthony Simonson playing well to start the year as well. And there's even players that we've never even heard of before on Boston that have been making terrific roles for themselves as well. So I think these are 2 teams that we talked about the gap year in the first episode that are going in totally different directions. And if I look back to our predictions, I had the Celtics at 7 winning the play-in and then potentially losing to the Hawks in the first round. We'll get to the Hawks in a second. Big, you had the Celtics 6th, playing the that would be the Bucks in the first round, losing to the Bucks as well. They could even be better than that if they get their team fully back. I mean, yeah, maybe the 6-7 seed is about where we expect them to be, but instead of a first round exit, this could be another conference finals trip for the Celtics.
I think that's a big point. So if we go look at gap years in the past, the gap years are something for people who don't know who we're talking about. A gap year is when a team who is a contending team takes a year off due to an injury. And oftentimes this isn't something that you choose to do, but it is an opportunity for your organization to be in a really, really good position if you capitalize on your assets as good as possible. The last team that we had who executed a gap year was the Golden State Warriors, who lost Steph Curry in 2021. I want to say that was.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Yeah, it was 2021. Yeah. So they lost Curry into 2021. This was not something they really had a choice of. And in doing so, they, acquired a bunch of assets, traded pieces, got picks, and they were able to draft at the top of the draft with pick 2. And then they also had another later pick 2. And throughout those drafts during their gap year, they got James Wiseman, which didn't work out for them. Jonathan Kuminga and Moses Moody. Now, the Golden State Warriors then went on to win the championship the next year. And so you could say, oh, is this a success or not? I'm not sure that the gap year part of it was a success because Kuminga, Wiseman, they didn't get anything out of it. And there was a big question at the time. I remember because the Raptors were selling of whether or not they should have traded Wiseman and Kuminga and these pieces for Pascal Siakam, which would have been a huge deal at the time to make that trade. They didn't do so, and so I think we found them a little bit worse off because they haven't seen the development until now of Jonathan Kuminga. Other teams that have made gap years, I mean, I think the best explanation of a gap year that we've ever seen is the San Antonio Spurs when they did it back in 1997. They had David Robinson. He got injured. They took a gap year and drafted Tim Duncan and then went on to win a championship 2 years later and then 4 more afterwards. So when you look at gap years, it is a question of utilizing your assets to the best of your ability. And I think there is a chance for you to still contend because they are good teams, but do you instead try to acquire assets? And the Pacers seem to be in a position where they have not performed yet at a level where you could say they're really going to contend. And, Halliburton's not going to be back by the end of the year. And even if Tatum is back, I will say Achilles injuries have taken players a long time to truly recover from. So there is a chance where we look at him, he could come back, but he won't be the same guy. Is it enough for the playoffs, or would you rather get the top asset of having a top pick again? If the Pacers decide to instead do this and get a top pick, I could see them in a really good position because this is a choice. And if they end up actually having a top 10 pick for like the second time ever, if you get high enough, you're talking, a good wing player like Darren Peterson or, AJ DeBanza would be huge to add alongside Tyrese Halliburton.
Whether it's getting lucky in the lottery or even potentially because they know how good they are when they're healthy, I think they would be more willing to, hey, we're at 9 right now, but we want to trade up to 3 and we'll give you next year's first because we know that we're going to be in the title contender next year. We're not going to need that 28th, 29th, 30th overall pick. So they can have the more freedom to go get the, the Boozer, to go get the DeBanza, the Peterson, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that could even be in play as well for them potentially. I don't want to say making an all-in move, but potentially just putting all their chips on the table and saying we know how good we are. If we get that one other piece, potentially the Miles Turner replacement, I think it'd be likely for them to do that as well. And it's going to cost less if they have a higher pick. Moving from 15 to 3 might be different than moving from 8 to 3. Or we could see them just win the lottery.
Oh, or they could also be in the same boat that we wanted the Golden State Warriors to be in, which is let's say you have a top 5 pick and you say, oh, there's a bad team that wants this pick that'll give me, I don't know, Trey Murphy and give me Trey Murphy and Herb Jones to New Orleans, and you can have this pick and you can draft somebody. Like that's a position where I'd hope that Indiana is in, because right now I don't know where their net rating is for offensively right now, but I know that like last year they were one of the best offensive teams in the league, and last year right now they're 28th. That's and 27th in net rating. So like
not good to be sandwiched between the Pelicans and Wizards in offensive rating.
But it is when you consider that you have your own pick and you know that your top player isn't here. So this team is better than they look. They just beat the Warriors. But it is they're in a crossroads of decision making. Whereas, as you said, with the Celtics, it seems like they're more willing to go in because they have guys. They got themselves under the tax, so they're actually okay for the second apron. Where maybe they do go for it this year to see if they can push their way into the playoffs and have Tatum back. But is that worth sacrificing the asset of having a top pick to add to a core that's already competitive when you know that your core is extremely expensive already? Like Boston is spending a lot of money on this team, and they're going to continue to have to spend a lot of money on this team. And the best way to get assets that are cheap are to draft them. So,
yeah. One last overreaction before we move on to the Portland Trailblazers. I'm excited to talk about them. The Orlando Magic, a team that I had as potentially the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, have just not looked good. Their offensive rating last year was 109. That has gone up to 116 in their first 7 games this year. Their defensive rating last year was 109, and that has also gone up to 116, which is very peculiar given that Desmond Bane, we know, is going to help increase the offensive floor. But we thought he wouldn't, mitigate the defensive floor, and it's just something that I can't really put my finger on exactly why, because you will never in a million years be able to convince me that Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was the person that was holding that team together by the glue. Like, that just does not make any sense to me, especially with Desmond Bane being a plus player in comparison to him. And we look at Paolo's stats year over year. His points per game are down about 2.5, but his field goal percentage is the same. His 3-point percentage is only down about 4%. His rebounds are actually up by 2 as well. And I thought that Wendell Carter's been playing great. Jalen Suggs, while he might be a little bit of a bonehead when it comes to his IQ on the court, I thought it's playing fine as well. So I can't quite put my finger on exactly why. If it is just simply, hey, let's integrate Desmond Bane into this lineup, it's going to take some time. How long is it going to take? We're 7 games in, you're 3-4. Paolo's not been looking good. I remember last Saturday, he had a game winner attempt with like 14 seconds left in the shot clock, double covered, fadeaway from 30 feet. I believe it was against the Hawks, and I kind of looked at it like, what are you doing? Like, I heard a funny comparison on Zach Lopod earlier this week about how he might just be the Josh Smith of this century, and I really hope that's not the case, because that's an expensive Josh Smith. And then we look at the Atlanta Hawks as well, a team that I had as 2nd in the Eastern Conference. They are currently underperforming very poorly. 3-3 is where they're at. Now, Jalen Johnson, who I thought was going to be a terrific, not pickup, but I guess bringing back from injury, he only got to play 35 games last year. He's been playing fantastic to start the year. Jalen Johnson's averaging 20 points a game, leading the team in scoring, as well as 8 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals as well. He's efficient as well. He's shooting 58% when it comes to threes. He's not really a 3-point shooter, so I wouldn't even look at that. Porzingis averaging your 19 a game. He has only played 4 games out of the 6, but I think that's more precautionary than it is anything. It's Trae Young that really concerns me. We did just get the news that he's going to be out 4 weeks with I believe it was MCL sprain. It was a sprain in his knee, but it wasn't poor to the point that he was going to be missing the entire season. But if you look at his stats, 18 points a game is nothing too out of the ordinary for Trae. He's usually in that 18 to 21 range. What I'm concerned about is 7.8 assists a game. This is a guy who consistently leads the league in assists, and he finally got shooters around him, but he's just, for whatever reason, not getting the ball to other players, and I don't understand why. Maybe there's not as much gravity towards him, so as other players aren't as open as they used to be. But you look at his splits as well. His 3-point percentage, and this is not made up, is 19%. He is shooting 19%, and this was the whole reason he was drafted, was his ability to not just hit threes, but hit threes at a long range as well. We look at his overall field goal percentage as well. It's 37%. That should be his 3-point percentage, not his overall field goal percentage. I don't think it's the difference in his shot selection. I think it could just be he doesn't have as much gravity going towards him that he used to, which is lowering his assist numbers, and due to that, he's not able to hit the open man, forcing him to get that one-on-one coverage. And then he's like, I don't know if he's panicking. Maybe we could be something about the full court press, which I know we're going to talk about too, that's been up at ticking this year. I'm not too sure what it is, but Trae Young needs to figure it out first, and he needs to figure it out the second he comes back from injury, because everyone else around him is playing fantastic. Porzingis is doing great. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is doing great. Jalen Johnson's leading the team in scoring. We have the Great Barrier Thief as well, who's doing fantastic and leading the league in steals as well. Reese Shea's taken a bit of a step up. He's not averaging the points per game we'd like, but his efficiency is getting better. So it truthfully is just their leader, Trae Young, who's not playing up to expectations, and I'm very curious to see how this team looks the next 4 weeks without him. Not that I think they're going to be the best team in the league, but it could maybe not pass the sniff test, especially with Trae Young being a free agent in this offseason. He has not re-signed a contract with Atlanta yet.
And I think the one example that I think is pivotal is when we started the season, they played Toronto, and
And I was,
Toronto's
yeah.
not Toronto's not 30th in defense because they actually looked really good against Atlanta, and they have not looked good since then. I mean, okay, they did beat Cleveland last night, and that
No Donovan Mitchell,
helps.
no Garland. I mean, it was Lonzo Ball and Jalen Tyson in the backcourt.
But they're 26th in defense, and they looked like a good defensive team against Atlanta, which is concerning because Atlanta should be an offensive centric team when you consider that you have Trae Young as your pivotal piece. And that's just not been it. So yeah, it's something that I'll be curious to see how they look a lot with Jalen Johnson as the number one option for the next couple of weeks, and if this team looks a little bit different or if they look weak because, hey, if you bring out and have Nickeil Alexander-Walker and Dyson Daniels on the perimeter as your two guards and Jalen Johnson's your number one scoring, if this team doesn't step it up defensively as one of the top defensive teams in the league, with, a Kongwu still and all these pieces that they have on this roster, I'd start to question if Quinn Snyder is really, that's a Quinn Snyder question because it's a really good defensive lineup without Trae Young. So I don't know if Atlanta is going to take a huge step back because offensively they already weren't there and they should have an offensive step up or a defensive step up. But yeah, the Trae Young injury is a good. I don't want to say it's good because injuries are never good, but
I think it'll answer some questions.
It might answer some questions about the depth and what this team is and their coaching. And it's something just to watch. And I guess my last thing I want to remark on, for me, my last note of my overreactions is about Minnesota. So my Western Conference predictions, I can put them back up on the screen. I don't believe in any of them right now because they just haven't been there. And the one thing that I want to mark on is Minnesota. I had Houston and I had Minnesota at the 3 and the 4, and I don't believe either of them will be there. I actually don't have a whole lot of belief in Houston right now, but Minnesota is concerning. Right now they don't have Anthony Edwards for a little bit of time. He should be back though. It's not a very long-term injury. But one stat that I saw that is pretty much a big sign of what this team has looked like is when they have not had Rudy Gobert on the floor, they have a 133 defensive rating. When they have him on the floor, they have a 110. So Rudy Gobert, we have known, has been a fantastic player defensively, but this team cannot survive if that is what their defense is bringing to the table, and they have good defensive players. Another thing, they don't have a point guard right now.
Yeah, I was going to touch on that. Mike Conley, who we know has been progressively regressing, if that's the correct phrase.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, November 2nd, 2025, Rob Dillingham should have been the starting point guard by now. They spent a very high draft pick on him. If not the starting point guard, at least the primary ball handler as well. And he's unplayable. He's still, to this point in his career, just unplayable, to the point where they are forcing Mike Conley to play, if I had to guess, 25 to 30 minutes a game, which he just can't do anymore. And Ant-Man, the way that they need him on offense, they can't afford for him to expend so much energy on defense. So I agree with you. I think that they need a point guard. I think that Rudy Gobert is a floor raiser, although that stat shocked me because even though you're a huge Gobert guy, I've never been the biggest Gobert guy. I know he's a great defender as well, but to me that was eye-opening and shocking. 133, you said, without him on the floor, despite their depth in the the front court.
Well, Johan Behringer is not a good defensive player, and that's a big thing. And neither is Julius Randle, because Julius Randle focuses most of his energy offensively. It was actually why the team was very good with Karl-Anthony Towns, because he was a good piece alongside Gobert. But right now, they don't have it, and Gobert is that much of a difference, because defensively, outside of Gobert, the only other guy they have that's a defensive-minded player is McDaniels and Conley, who is, he's pretty much done. I mean, you were saying Conley's minutes are up. They're starting DiVincenzo at point guard. Like
that's not good. That's not good.
He should not be starting at point guard. So it's something that you touched on within your desires at the beginning of the season, but it's also something that I started to think about when I'm looking at the Western Conference and why I'm a little bit down on a lot of these teams. Minnesota does not have a point guard right now. And another team that doesn't have a point guard is the Houston Rockets.
Mhm.
And another team that doesn't have a point guard is the Memphis Grizzlies because of Ja Morant. There is another team that doesn't have a point guard, the Dallas Mavericks. And all of these teams that don't have point guards are huge question marks for us right now. Whereas all the teams that do, you talk about the Thunder, they look really good. They have a true point guard. The Denver Nuggets, they look good. The Chicago Bulls, the Philadelphia 76ers with Tyrese Maxey. The Cavs are a question, but we know that they're going to get back with get some health
we
back.
haven't seen their full team yet.
And the Knicks, Jalen Brunson has did look like he got a little hurt in the Bucks game, and so he's been not playing at his best lately either. But like these teams that have point guards have looked way better. I mean, the Spurs have two of them. They've got Castle and Harper, and they look great too.
And they haven't even brought Fox back yet. They'll have a third in a few weeks.
Yeah, they like there's a lot of that where I'd say that the point guard thing that you talked about at the beginning of the season, I think is a little bit more important than others. So, as a transition to another point guard that I want to talk about, because he has been unbelievable so far to start the season, is Drew Holiday and the Portland Trailblazers. Because the Portland Trailblazers, I think, are one of the best representations of the next trend of basketball. That's the full court press. Portland is currently leading the league in full court press. Do you know how much percentage they are right now? Can you guess how much percentage of plays they're running press on?
I know the league average is not that high. I'm going to guess close to double the league average. I'll just say 10%.
They are running full court press 24% of plays.
Wow.
They are
Okay.
running the full court press so often. It's actually the full court press has increased across the rest of the league. The second most is at 17% right now, but the full court press has increased a lot. That's the Toronto Raptors who are running 17%.
Okay.
It's not working for them. So if you consider the other team that it is working for, the Pacers, they're at 11%. But the full court press is the next transition because we've seen what it had done last year in the playoffs with the Indiana Pacers running it at a 23% clip throughout the playoffs, and it completely derailed all the teams that they played.
Yep.
What the full court press does on anything is it really limits the amount of effort that or not limits, but I guess the productivity of especially heliocentric teams and teams that are built a lot on one offensive weapon. And we've seen this work really, really well for Portland so far this season when they played the Lakers and when they played against the Thunder and when they played, when we saw that against the Thunder with the Pacers, or when we saw the Blazers last night just played the Nuggets and they beat them against Jamal Murray. This full court press, led a lot by Drew Holiday, has caused them to have a defensive rating on press plays of 81.7.
That is tremendous.
Which is next to like Pistons and Spurs level defense. Obviously, this doesn't translate for the whole game. They are not the top defensive team in the league, though they are near the top because of this number. What it has done is it has really impacted these teams that are really focused on high usage percentage players. And what it has caused us to see is that I think that there's a chance that if you run a high volume of a full court press against a team that has a true point guard, like we just mentioned being a real asset, you can almost nullify that. And could this take down a team like the Lakers who have Luka and Austin Reeves? It looks like it can. It's worked a little less effectively against a team like Utah, who doesn't have a primary ball handler like that because it doesn't tire them out as much, but it's still an extremely effective method. And defensively, it means that Portland, who has about 3 all NBA or all defensive level players on their team, and you could even say even more potentially with Robert Williams coming back. And you don't know if we're going to get some progression from like a Klingon. There's a chance there too. This is a team that is going to be unbelievably on the defensive end all season. And if they continue, let's say they regress a little bit down and they're not running 24%, but they're down to like a 16%. This is still going to be really hard for teams to beat because this is essentially what the pace and the high energy and high leverage teams do. And it causes teams to tire out, and it
Mhm.
means that teams are less effective at scoring the ball. What was the other number I saw? I think it was that they have held their like teams to they have the highest percentage of shots within, or like the lowest amount of time left in the shot clock.
Mhm.
That like Portland has been phenomenal at stopping the ball, and a lot of that is led behind Drew Holiday being so good again. Like, he's 35, and Drew Holiday is a key member to this team right now. I want to say, if I bring out his like plus minus right now, it's one of the best in the league, which is crazy that that's coming out of Drew Holiday. But he is one of the most effective and most efficient players on the floor right now. His current on-off percentage is, or on-off is 19.4 per 100 possessions. That is insane how much how effective he is on the floor right now. He's got one of the best one of the highest level like values so far in the season, and a lot of this is just how good he has been. And
Mhm.
what it has contributed to is currently the Blazers lead the league in opponent turnover percentage at 21% of the 21%, which the second most is 16%. And that is actually around more league average. They are just that much more efficient at causing turnovers and stopping the other team from moving the ball.
Mhm.
And I think there's going to be more teams that move on this trend, but like defensively, you need the bodies to do this,
Yeah,
and they have it.
I'm gonna push back a hair on this becoming a trend because I just don't think as many teams are equipped to do what the Blazers are doing. Like you said, you need the bodies to do this. Yeah, it's gonna exhaust your opponent, but it's gonna take a lot out of you on defense as well. There are not many teams. We just talked about the lack of guard depth because you're not gonna have your big man full court pressing. But if you already have a lack of guard depth and you're struggling to score on offense, you're struggling to facilitate the ball, I don't know if you can afford to exhaust so much on defense as well by doing that. So yeah, in a perfect world, everyone would be doing that. But a team like Indiana, a team like Portland, even a team like, let's just say, Boston, who, while they might not have the guard depth necessarily, you can still have Tatum when he's healthy, Brown, Derek White, a tremendous on-ball defender as well, do things like that. There's just not too many teams equipped to do that. So while I agree, like, X's and O's wise and just looking at the overall numbers, yes, it does make sense for the trend to go this way. I don't think there's enough depth at the guard position overall in the league for everyone to start doing this the way that a too big, which has recently come up, the way that a, 3-point shooting barrage came up in the late 2010s. And I will say too, I don't know exactly if the Blazers will be able to keep this up, just because you got to think too, not only how much it's going to take out of your team, but what kind of injuries are going to come up. Because one injury, two injuries that come up, and now you don't have that depth that's going to afford you to be able to play nine people 25, 26 minutes a game. If we look at a team like Indiana right now, who had 7 players on the scratch list the other night, obviously they are going to still be doing that. I believe from what I'm looking at right now, they're pressing third highest in the league on 11% of plays, but they don't even have the depth to do that. So is it they're going to take a step back, or would a fully healthy Pacers team press more? I don't know. I'm curious to see that. Maybe that's a narrative we follow throughout the season, the overall percentage of presses and maybe the percentages going up across the league, or the teams that press a lot, the Blazers, the Raptors, the Pacers, the Celtics. What does their injury luck look like throughout the remainder of the season?
That's a good point too, because last night Blake Wesley went down for the
Oh.
Blazers. Now, he is not one of the best defensive players. He's actually one of the worst defensive players in this team, but he did go down. He might be out for a little while, but they got Robert Williams back last night.
Mhm.
But the other big injury is they lost Matisse Thybulle. He tore his UCL already this season, which is that's an elbow injury, so that's generally not something that's a wear and tear thing with your legs.
Sure.
That's kind of more of a freak injury. And they don't have Scoot Henderson right now. But the one thing I'd push back is I think that this might not be used by top teams, right? This is not going to be used by the Thunder as much or the Nuggets as much. But what it could be used by is a lot of these teams that have a lot of depth already, who don't have a lot of star players. And that's why Portland is such an interesting take, because their best player is Denny Avdia, who is exactly this type of, he's a 6'8", very athletic, rotational and valuable and versatile defender. This is exactly the type of player that you would put this in. And they've got Tumani Kamara, and they have Drew Holiday, and you've got Donovan Clingan and Robert Williams. And there's so many guys on this roster that are versatile like this that you could see it from them. There's some other teams that you could see it from. It's why Indiana did it, because they had one star player in Tyrese Halliburton, and then a bunch of role player defensive players that I think could work around this. You could see it with Boston. I don't know if they would do it as much. I think this year maybe you'd see an increase, because I think actually currently right now this year they're 4th in press percentage. They're at 11%. They have significantly increased it, and they're 3rd in defensive rating during the press right now. The only 2 teams higher than them are Portland, and actually the team that is above Portland in effective defensive rating is Cleveland, who is kind of quite surprising to me. But if you think about the team members that they have, they're doing this with injuries right now. If they were healthy, and you can do this with, I don't know if Garland is the type of guy that you can do this with, but Lonzo definitely is. So there's a lot of guys like that. I mean, we could see this from some top teams who have a lot of depth, like the Spurs. I could see 100% being a team that they have so many players on this team. They could 100% be a team that does this. Atlanta, I wouldn't see this as much. I think they've got a lot of depth, but without Trey, or even if they had Trey, I don't know if he's the type of guy you'd want full court pressing. But it's a very interesting phenomenon, because while it's not going to get to the level of, you know, the spacing era, we are seeing a trend upwards. I want to say there was a stat that Kevin O'Connor posted that was the full court press in 2009, the first time that they started really tracking this by Synergy, was at 0.8% of plays in the league. Last year, it was at 3.1%, and already this year, it's up to 4.8%. So it is significantly increasing, especially because, as we mentioned, it is really effective at stopping heliocentric players like Luka and, Shea and Brunson, which is a, high usage percentage point guards and ball handlers. It tires them out. And if you've got the bodies to be able to run it, it's going to be something that you can really take advantage of. Indiana did this all postseason. And maybe it's not something we see as much in the regular season. Last year, Indiana ran the press at 10% during the regular season, but they really ramped it up during the postseason up to 23%. However, the one thing that you just mentioned with the injuries is it does contribute to injuries. We've already seen it. The amount of wear and tear this causes is why we've seen so many injuries along this pathway. Indiana played Milwaukee. Indiana played Boston. Like, Indiana lost Tyrese Halliburton. It's not something that is super sustainable, at least so far, until I think bodies change and we start to see different conditioning. But it does wear and tear teams out defensively. And I would be watching it this year as a lot of these teams that aren't star heavy might become teams that are actually pushing their way into the back end of the playoffs by defense. And I think Portland is the perfect example of this, because they have Drew Holiday, who is one of the best perimeter defenders we've ever seen. And while he's not going to get in the DPOY conversation, he should be. Like, is he not going to? He wouldn't win it over Wemby, but his contribution defensively is very clear how good he has been so far to start the season.
I guess the jig is off for me.
One thing I really love with Portland's offense so far is exactly what a couple of other teams are doing, but it's unique because Portland is doing it in a slightly different way than I've seen other teams do it offensively. And that is play the high post game. But generally when you see a high post game, you see somebody right here, an offensive player, like a Giannis or a Jokic, a bigger player that is also a good distributor. The one thing that I've seen that I think Portland has done really well with this is Denny Avdija in this spot.
Not your Giannis or Jokic type.
No, this is a guy who can shoot, who can actually move the ball, who's a scorer. We've seen Draymond do this as well during the Golden State situation, but he was also more of a big. He wasn't as explosive offensively as we have from Denny. Now, that's not saying Giannis isn't, but those three assets aren't something that you often see. And what Portland has been doing a lot is they'll have Drew come up with the ball right down here. And instead of going straight to throw it in the post and then let the offense run that way, what they've been doing is a lot more what Golden State used to do. He's going to dribble and throw the ball over to Denny. And what you have after Denny has the ball is, instead of just rolling around the defender right to the rim, Denny quickly looks for 3 different locations. Drew will either cut this way, which allows a Jeremy Grant to rotate over to here, and a Shaden Sharp will cut generally behind Drew Holiday over to here for that move. While you have normally a Donovan Clingan right here in this lower post situation. Now, we've seen Milwaukee do this a lot with Miles Turner and with Giannis, but what the reason this has been unique with Denny is I have seen them run this not in just half-court sets. They run this in the fast break offense, which is so unique because you see a team run full speed, pass it to this guy, and all of these guys are cutting at full speed.
While the defense is probably collapsing to the hoop because it's in the fast break.
We saw one play, and I'll have it play on here. Hopefully NBA won't copyright us as we do it. but where on the full fast break, Drew dribbles the ball up, throws it to Denny, pulls the defender off right here, which allowed him to throw it right back to Drew because the defender had to go guard Denny. And this type of offensive game is a very unselfish pass first type of offense that I love seeing. It's a new evolution of the high post offense, which is one of the most effective offenses actually in the league. We've seen this with Jokic being a primary guy who's done it. Embiid did it at the top of his game when he was at there about 2 years ago. You even see this from, LeBron did this a lot. It's why Anthony Edwards this offseason talked about developing his post game. And Kobe Bryant used to do this. This high post play with all the other guys moving around you are great when you have such a versatile player up here. And I didn't think Denny Avdia was this type of guy, but right now, Thiago Splitter, as well as what I've heard, Damian Lillard off the bench, have been doing a great job of running this team to actually be this versatile, to run this not just in half court sets, but in the full speed fast break offense, which is something that really gets the defense offline. It's why the Blazers are one of the top teams in pace right now. And they're effective. We've talked about how much their conditioning has contributed to the full court press. It's also contributing offensively. They're not efficient scorers because Shaden Sharp's not a great 3-point shooter yet. Denny is not a super efficient scorer. Drew Holiday never has been. But when you move the game this fast, it takes all the guys who have weaknesses in their offensive game and allows them to actually play the game at a higher, more efficient level, which has been great so far for Portland.
What a combination too, not just going that fast on offense, but then keeping the pressure on defense as well. So then it's almost not allowing the other team to move as fast as them on offense. And because of that, they're not getting a break. They're moving out in offense so quickly. The defense is expending so much energy trying to guard that fast high pick and roll that you're talking about, or fast high post, as well as then right after that being picked up full court by a guy like Drew Holiday, who's an all-NBA defender. And then when they do get across the half court line, they've got 17 seconds to set up their sets. Like you said, they're getting shots off at the lowest time in the shot clock, at least the Portland defense is. So it's a fantastic combination, and one that, as I said earlier, we need to see if they can do it for 82 games. And if they can, this is a team that's going to clear the play-in, which is not something that either of us had anticipated, I don't think.
And I've actually seen this contributed too. So it's influenced a little bit of how they've ran their full court press, because at times you see Shaden Sharp might be the guy who moves the least on offense. And so he has the most energy for the next defensive set, meaning he's going to be the guy that picks up the defender right here because he's right here. Now, he is the worst defender on this team, so they're often going to roll with him all the way up into the point and then switch him on to somebody else. But that picking him up that high is going to be that important. You actually see this happen last night where they did this with Sharp pressed Murray all the way up to the point, and then they would do it, and then they get a switch, so it would be Drew on to Murray, and then Denver, being a really good team, would find a way to try to switch it back onto Sharp, and you would see at times Drew Holiday rotate back over to double Murray because Drew is so good defensively that it would then nullify the weaknesses that Sharp would do and push the defense into their interior where Tumani Kamara, Donovan Clingan, and Robert Williams always were. So this is a really unique style of offense that I've seen so far, and it's why I've really enjoyed watching this team.
Nice. My only concern, I suppose, not just the 82 game sample size of doing it, but I'm curious when you get to the playoffs, and we need Portland to get there first. But what's it going to be like when a team has 7 games to adjust to this? How, and you're not playing the Charlotte Hornets, you're not playing the New Orleans Pelicans, you're playing 7 games against the Nuggets, who obviously they played and beat last night, 7 games against the Oklahoma City Thunder, 7 games against a team like, some of those other crazier teams in the West. That'd be my concern, but I think that it's something that definitely can work. I'm just curious to see what is almost going to be their counterpunch to the other team's counterpunch from this.
Yeah.
I guess this jig is off for me.
You're going to make me do whiteboard segments all the rest of the season now.
That was really good.
All right. Trade machine. Get it active.
Let's do it, guys. So I had a lot of fun in the trade machine this week. I was watching the Sixers and Wizards game, which as a Wizards fan, I was excited. That is how I want all 82 games to go, competitive for 3.5 quarters and find a way to blow it at the end. But the young guys get a little bit of progression. What I don't want to happen, though, is to see CJ McCollum taking 5 shots in the final 2 minutes and overtime. He does not need to have the ball in his hand there. But what I was curious about is why Joel Embiid only played 25 minutes then, and why, looking at his minutes per game, they're down so much. He's still able to be efficient, have a decent PER per 36. But I'm curious, like, the Sixers, this team that they have currently with Maxey and then Edgecombe taking a leap as well, with McCain one day coming back as well, it just doesn't seem like it fits Embiid anymore. If the play is to, play for the playoffs and have Embiid healthy for the playoffs, I get it. Great strategy by Nick Nurse. But I got in the trade machine and I was like, where can we send Joel Embiid to that would maybe make the Sixers better, give Embiid a fresh start, shake up the league a little bit? And it was a lot more difficult than I thought. Big and I were actually doing this together, and we were kind of curious how this would work, especially with the new, the way the first apron is. Some people hard capped the first apron as well. So I found 2 trade scenarios that I really liked. The first one is going to be a 3-team trade, and that 3-team trade involves the Utah Jazz, the New Orleans Pelicans, as well as the Philadelphia 76ers. It would send Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Hawkins, and 2 second-round picks via Utah to the Philadelphia 76ers. That would give them still a big to replace it, but more of an offensive big that could help them continue to push the floor at a high rate, something I don't know if Embiid will be able to do, play in the high pace that we've seen him do in the past. It would send Zion Williamson as well as Jeremiah Fears to the Utah Jazz. This would give Zion a fresh start. This would replace the Lauri hole and would be essentially a 1-for-1 in that power forward spot, and give them a essentially first round pick. While Danny Ainge loves getting picks back, at least with Jeremiah Fears, you could, chalk it up to being the 7th overall pick in a draft because he is so young and a great shooter as well, somebody that could complement Ace Bailey very well, which would then send Joel Embiid to the Pelicans, as well as 2 first round picks. These 2 would be via the Lakers and via Minnesota. Now, the reason they're doing this, we know New Orleans needs the picks, but also they're taking on the second biggest cap hit in the league. And this is essentially New Orleans saying, we will eat this money. We understand we're not going to be competitive, and Embiid will play out the twilight of his career here because he has another 4 years of $55 million, which I believe goes over $60 million towards the end of it. Now, that first round pick, the first one is a 2027 first via the Lakers by way of Utah, and the next one is a 2029 first via Minnesota by the way of Utah, which could be valuable because who knows what Minnesota is going to look like in 3 years. I personally do think that they have reached their ceiling. Big, what are your thoughts on that first trade? I'll go through it again. Sixers receive Lauri Markkanen, Jordan Hawkins in 2 seconds. Jazz receive Zion and Jeremiah Fears. The Pelicans receive Embiid, a 2027 Lakers first, and a 2029 Minnesota first.
So if I'm looking at this deal, trying to figure out who I would think says no, I think the one team that 100% says yes in this deal is New Orleans. New Orleans gets 2 firsts and they get Joel Embiid. And we just talked about the question marks of this roster being that they have a lot of pieces that are really interesting, but we don't know why they're not working together. And I think we talked about this back in Philly when Embiid was trying to build, when we were trying to build around him or Simmons, like back in 2019 and 2020, that the thing that he needed was a bunch of shooters around him and, and a couple cutters and all that type of stuff too, and defensive players. And you'd have that around Embiid. And maybe Embiid's regression, it doesn't hit as hard as we thought it would now that he is the primary player there in New Orleans with a bunch of really good players around him still. I don't like Jordan Poole, but it's fine. The thing I would say is I don't think that Philly or Utah would take this deal.
Okay.
And my thought is, I like the Jeremiah Fears piece, but I don't see Zion as being much of an asset anymore. I think there's a question of whether or not he's actually going to be a piece that you wouldn't want. He's a big contract, but it's a question of like, if you're trading for him and you're Utah and you are really trying to build around this Ace Bailey piece and want a high pick, Zion is not exactly the most reliable guy to build around. And I don't know if he can be a number one option because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, maybe he's not the number one option there, but are you going to trade a guy in Lauri Markkanen who is at the peak of his value right now? Probably going to get you a couple firsts for fears and a contract in Zion that you might not want. I think it'd be more likely that Utah would ask for, can we get Murphy and can we get Jones
Mm-hmm.
and Fears for Lauri? Like, I think they'd want those pieces. Or can we be the team that gets Jordan Hawkins
Mm-hmm.
in this deal? And for Philly, I love Lauri. But the question, I don't see if Lauri is the perfect fit alongside them if they don't have a big. Adam Bona could be
He
a
looked
piece.
fantastic against Washington. Like, he played 7 minutes in the fourth and all of overtime while Embiid sat the bench, and I think that was because of what he was able to do on the defensive end of the floor, and also having fresh legs. Embiid had, I think, 19 and 7 in the first half that game, so he
Mhm.
clearly didn't have the freshest legs, but he looked tremendous defensively in the clutch then. And this would also give them an opportunity to play him more. But I think Lauri Markkanen, while maybe not the best defensive player, could even play the 5 at some points as well, depending on the
Yeah.
matchups.
I think Philly's closer to this deal than Utah is to me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's an opinion on Zion Williamson. If you're higher on Zion than I am, I fully understand going on and saying that's enough of a trade. I just don't know if Utah is going to be a team that says, "Hey, Zion Williamson is really going to be the guy we're going to get for Lauri Markkanen," when they could also look at a team and just say, "Hey, Philly, do you just want Lauri and give us a bunch of picks?" And or would they be like, hey, I know that this wouldn't work specifically. This is what we were talking about in regards to contracts, is that why wouldn't they be the team to say, hey, how about you give us Joel Embiid and we'll figure out what to do with him.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't know in that case yet. And Embiid, you're probably not trading him until around the deadline anyways. So we need to see what he has left. I think, because if you're Utah, you want AJ Devanza. Like, that's who you
Yeah.
want in this draft. And so you're going to make a trade. Is your team too good if you get Embiid? And if Zion is healthy, is your team also too good? But not good enough to ever compete. And that's where I'm at with, I guess, Zion. So like the trade, I don't know I don't know what people value Zion at.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. I think my reasoning for Zion is more so getting a bit closer to what your timetable is now. Zion is still younger than Lauri Markkanen, and I think it maybe not a buy low given what you are giving up, but it could be something that if Zion ends up, change of scenery is a good thing for him, and he ends up not being that number one player. This could be 80 cents on the dollar to what you can trade him in 2 years for a team that is desperate and wants to. So I think it's more so the idea of what Zion could turn into with that change of scenery, a different coaching staff. We both said Will Hardy's a great coach. So I think that'd be more of the interest there and what you could yield for Zion in the future.
The change of scenery thing is a good point, because they've talked to NBA players have talked about this a lot of times, where
Mhm.
when you going from a place in New Orleans, which we know has not been great for him, for his personal life and his health, for Zion, NBA players have openly said that if you want to just focus on basketball, you go to Milwaukee or you go to Utah
Mhm.
because there's nothing to do, or Minnesota. You go to those because there's nothing to do. That might be the best version of him. But if I'm Utah, I'm also like, can I squeeze something else out of this deal?
Yeah.
The Pelicans are getting Joel Embiid. What else can I get out of this deal? Like, that's so.
And it's definitely tough because the Sixers don't have their own pick this year, as well as the Pelicans don't
Yeah.
have their own pick. So it's tough for Utah to squeeze something else out, which is why I put Fears in there. I could have put a lesser player or prospect for a similar salary, but I thought that would be the closest
Mhm.
to it. Now, the second trade I like a lot more, not just because my Washington Wizards are in it, but I do think that this is more likely a yes from all three sides. It starts with the Philadelphia 76ers acquiring the expiring contract of $30 million of CJ McCollum, Corey Kispert, who is on a very friendly deal of $13 million with 3 years remaining on it, and Zach Edey from Memphis as a replacement to Joel Embiid, who's still a young, promising prospect. They would also be receiving a 2029 first via Portland, which is what the Wizards got in the Denny Avdia trade, and they would receive Memphis's first round pick this year, ideally with some sort of protection on it. Now, I know that sounds like a lot. Memphis is giving up, but walk with me here. Memphis would acquire Joel Embiid. They would also acquire the Oklahoma City first round pick from Washington. So while Memphis is giving up their first to Philly, they are getting a late first back. So it's essentially just moving 10 or 12 spots back in the draft. They would also acquire Bub Carrington, who is a point guard on the Wizards right now in his second season. And they're going to be acquiring Bub Carrington because the Wizards will be getting Ja Morant in this deal and having their point guard for the future with John Conchar to make the salaries work. So to run it all down again, the Sixers acquire the expiring of CJ McCollum, giving them the cap flexibility where they can re-sign Maxey, who I believe already has a deal, but they will need to sign McCain, apparently Edgecombe as well. Kispert, who's just going to be depth at the forward and the wing position, a decent shooter, and Zach Edey, as well as 2 firsts. The Wizards acquired Ja Morant and a guy who's just going to be filling salary cap, and the Grizzlies acquired Joel Embiid and Bub Carrington. They will then have Jaren Jackson and Joel Embiid in that front court.
Hmm. Um, okay. That's an interesting deal. I guess my thing with it is for Philly, how is that a good acquisition of assets?
So
Like,
this
like
would be
Zach
me
Edey is good,
assuming
but
this would be me assuming that Philly's not competitive this year. Obviously, they've started off 4-1, so
yeah.
they should not do this deal if they think they're going to be competitive in the playoffs this year. I think this would be more so giving them the cap flexibility that they do not have right now because they've drafted so well and they have an opportunity to, re-sign and keep Maxey for a long time. McCain as well. Edgecombe, granted, just in his first year. That's something you'll have to pay sometime in the future, and Embiid would still be on the books by the time it is time for the Edgecombe extension. Now, I do understand the counterpoint to this would be if you want cap flexibility, you're going to get rid of Paul George before you get rid of Joel Embiid. But for this exercise is more so getting rid of Embiid. I think it's a great deal for Washington and Memphis. I agree that the Sixers would be the losers in here, but this is essentially the Sixers punting and saying like, hey, let's just see if we can get out of the hole we're in by having, I don't want to call Embiid a negative asset, but not what we thought. He's definitely not worth the $55 million in my opinion that he's being paid right now. And Paul George is such a negative asset that I don't think anyone's going to want him in the league. So if there's anyone that you are able to move off of, it might only be Joel Embiid if you had to do something for the flexibility.
I think the only thing I'd say is this: that trade feels a lot like the Rafael Devers trade from Boston this year, from Boston to San Francisco, where the whole concept behind the trade is to just dump a salary of a still very, very good player, knowing that he's not going to be good in a couple of years. And I think with that question is Boston at least got Kyle Harrison in that deal, which is a pitcher who I think has a contributing factor, could be a good player, even though Boston fans are going to look at it and be like, yeah, we got fleeced in this deal. I don't know how Philly's GM survives if they do this deal.
Let me ask you
because they get nothing.
Well, what if you replaced Kispert with Koulibaly?
Now I'm interested.
Okay. I don't want to give up Bilal Koulibaly, but I think that would be closer to getting the deal done.
So this is where I would say if you're Philly and you're just in the game of trying to flip out the contracts, then I think you're almost trying to tie George to Embiid and say, hey, we're going to get rid of this is me in this case. If this is this idea, I'm going to tie both of these contracts and say, give me everything.
Yeah.
Give if we're doing this deal, Washington, give me Middleton too. Another expiring deal. Give me all of these bad contracts that are expiring in this offseason. There's not a lot of free agents, but I'll spend my money now. Because the question I think with Philly in this contract situation with them is because of Edgecombe, McCain, and Maxey all still being cheaper contracts, you have the flexibility right now to do really anything. They're in a really interesting crossroads where you could say, hey, let's continue to build around Embiid and say, let's build this team here, or knowing that means that you're stuck with this team once those guys get old. Or do you flip these guys hoping that the assets that you get are going to be good pieces alongside Maxey and them? And that's a big question mark. Now, for the other teams in this deal, just to talk about them quick, if I'm Memphis, I say yes, because there's a lot of questions around Ja Morant right now in Memphis, and I think if you were flipping Ja for Embiid, you'd probably just say yeah and just say, yep, wipe our hands,
Being able to acquire Bub as well, who is a guy who I think can be a starting point guard in the league. Maybe not your best player, but still your fourth or fifth best starter.
And then for the Wizards, I could see, if you're getting rid of a couple pieces here, I'd question it if it's Koulibaly for them. But also then if I'm Philly, I'm saying I'm more likely to say yes here. Ja is a huge question mark, but once again, if you put Ja on this team, that's the point guard that we've said they needed. They have a ton of twos.
Yeah.
They've got a ton of wings that I think will be really good around them. But do you need to? Like, is Bob Carrington good enough that you could say, is this just making a deal to make a deal?
And it could be my thought process too as a Wizards fan is looking at the draft. If you're going to be taking top 3, this kind of it hones down what you need, and there's a little bit less margin for error. You're going to be getting your power forward, and I will say I loved the idea of getting a center in last year's draft, but Alex Sarr this year has been taking the majority of his shots inside the arc. Last year, close to 40% of his shots were 3-point shots. That's why I said he needs to learn how to play power forward and really commit to that. But this year, I believe only 14% of his shots are 3-pointers, whereas like 60% of them are within 15 feet, which is tremendous. He's not rebounding to the point that I'd like to see as starting center, but I know that's something that will come. He has been a lot more aggressive inside the paint, aggressive with his jump shots in the paint as well. So I'm liking what I'm seeing there. But if you have Ja Morant, you have Sarr who's blossoming into a center, then you don't need to necessarily, and you have all those 2 and 3, those big wings, you don't need to really question who do we need to draft. It's one of those power forwards that you're going to be taking, which I think lessens exactly what the questioning would be in the 26th draft for them.
I'd have a question in this for you as a Wizards fan. Let's say we wait to the end of the season. The Wizards have a top 5 pick. All right. It's not number 1, because if it's number 1, they're not doing a trade. Let's say it's 4. It's right outside of, it's not Boozer, Peterson, or Debanza. It's pick 4. The Embiid contract looks worse. Ja looks worse. Do you do in this deal and do a trade where you have the potential to get Embiid and potentially Ja if you gave up Koulibaly, Trey Johnson, the 4th pick? Like, would you be willing to go old with the wings that you have as part of your core if you could get an aging Joel Embiid and Ja Morant around those wings?
I wouldn't want to, just because I think it totally dismantles the last 3 years of pain and misery, because then it's like, okay, we might have a shot for the next 2 years and then we're right back where we are. And I'm also, I would under no circumstances trade Trey Johnson. What he's done the first 7 games of the season, his jump shot reminds me so much of Ray Allen, the way that it's kind of tight down low, as well as very quick release, a little bit lower and not as high above his head. He looks like Ray Allen out there shooting. He's been fantastic as well. He's shooting 44% from deep as well. Smaller sample size. He's not taking as many threes just given his situation. But I'm looking at Tankathon right now. And let's just say we did have that 5th pick. This is really, I don't want to say a 3-person draft, but I'm not as familiar with anyone outside of that top 3. Nate Ament from Tennessee looks like he's going to be a terrific prospect as well. Mikal Brown Jr. from Louisville as well. I think I've heard great things about. But the thing is, if you really are desperate in need for a point guard, do you go out and spend your $80 million in cap to get a guy like Trae Young, who might be available in the offseason as an unrestricted free agent, and then try to draft a power forward? Do you go try to get a center in the draft, in a draft that doesn't really have that much center depth? It's more so your power forward, your small forward, or maybe a ball handling type wing, which you have plenty of. I think I would rather try to, just continue to get that first, second, third pick, get a guy like Cameron Boozer to play alongside Alex Sarr in a situation where I can then bring in a point guard. And let's say I pay, whether it's
Yeah.
bringing in the $40 million John Morant contract or paying Trae Young a bit. I like the idea more of we have our wings set, we have our center, we need a power forward, we need a good guard. Let's go draft Cameron Boozer. Let's bring in John Morant and trade or Trae Young in unrestricted free agency. So we keep the youth of the team while bringing an adult in the room at the point guard position. Okay, maybe not adult in the room. We are talking about John Morant, but bringing in a veteran.
Yeah. I guess the point being, I think if you're Washington, you're looking at it as, okay, if we can get something for CJ and Chris Middleton, then let's do it.
Yeah.
But if otherwise, let's wait to the offseason, because point guard and center are the two positions that you need, because you've got, I think, all the guards that you have could be two guards. And there's a lot of guys in this team. It's a really, really good looking team. It's just a question of what is going to be the makeup once it's done. And yeah, I mean, if that's where you're at, I think you value the cap space if you're them. But hey, this is the whole thing with the Embiid trade. If you're making an Embiid trade, what does it look like? What is enough? What does Philly think Embiid still is? And what do you think of the large contract that this has? It's why I'd say it's very comparable to the Rafael Devers situation in the MLB, because Devers is one of the best players on the Red Sox.
Mm-hmm.
They still traded him because that contract is going to be eventually untradeable.
Mm-hmm.
And right now they were able to get rid of it. Now, I don't know if it was the best decision, I think, because they traded him so early, but they could end up being right in that deal. And you could say the same thing for Embiid, because otherwise you're in this Paul George situation right now, or what the Bucks were in with the Damian Lillard situation, where they had to get rid of him and just absorb his contract. Yeah.
I'd almost be willing to, last point on this, I'd almost be willing to say that the Devers situation might be closer to the Ja Morant, given the dysfunction and the disgruntlement between the Red Sox and Devers, kind of how the Grizzlies and Ja are right now. And Ja was paid based off of his 2022 season, where that team, were they in the conference finals or just the second round that they were playing in that
I think it was just the second. I think it was just the second round.
Gotcha. But they were projected to continue to grow. That was the start of their growing pains, if you will, that we saw a team like Minnesota do when they lost to Denver and then ended up making 2 straight conference finals. So I think they go both ways, but I would almost say that Ja Morant gets traded before Joel Embiid, given what's happened in the last 48 hours, and with him having $15 million or less on his deal.
Maybe next week we got to write up some Ja Morant trades.
Maybe we do.
So, I guess just to finalize that, if you're watching and you're like, if you have any other things, what do you want to think about his 2 trades? Leave them down in the comments. If you've got another Joel Embiid trade in your mind, put that down in the comments below as well, because I want to hear your guys' opinions on this as we look at they have 2 different timelines. This is not a question of like, oh, just make a trade to make a trade. It's not the Giannis situation. There's a very clear 2 separate timelines for Philly, and there's a crossroads they are at of, do you make the investment in the young guys, or do you make the investment in the current core you have? And so that's why we want to talk about it, and that's why I guess we'll talk about John next week. So to move on, just to kind of finalize, to talk about our narratives, we're going to go recap our narratives that we put in this week. I know you got the Hawks stuff, so you probably should start with the Hawks thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a tough look right now. We touched on it a bit in the overreactions, and I wasn't going to do an overreaction for it until Trae got hurt, because I thought he was just playing into the season. It was 7 games. Again, we touched on how things can look weird the first couple of games of the season, the first month or so, but Nickeil Alexander-Walker's looking good. Kristaps Porzingis is shooting 44% from deep, exactly what we needed him to do as well. Everything's looking like it should be for Atlanta. It was just Trae Young, their number 1 player, maybe not their number 1 scoring option necessarily. He's turned into more of a facilitator, but he's not playing up to his expectations. And I think that for them to be a top 4 seed or a 2nd seed, like I predicted them, he needs to be playing at an all-star level, and not just an all-star based on merit, an all-star based on stats. So I'm going to be continuing to monitor that narrative, especially how they look in the next 4 weeks without Trae Young, because I think that could say a lot about what the team is and what we could see Trae Young do in the summer of 2026. Because again, he's entering unrestricted free agency. Could it be where the Hawks don't even offer him the money he wants because they're like, hey, look, we saw that we were kind of better without you? Could it be a point where it's like, oh, he really is a lot of the glue, even if the shooting isn't there? Could he come back from injury fully healthy and finally be back to where he was and what we know he's capable of, which is 25 points, 12 assists as well? I don't know. That's what I'm going to be looking at as well. And then my other narrative, the Golden State Warriors. They have looked fantastic this year. I do think they are a true title contender to start. A couple of bad losses here and there, but again, I think they're still going to be in the mix and they have the experience to do so. Jonathan Kuminga has been looking fantastic as well. We've talked last episode about how he could be a guy that's traded at the deadline as well. But if he's still averaging 17, 7, and 5 like he has been to start this season, I think my Draymond Green potential 6th man of the year take could come true as well. Because what happens if, you want to put Al Horford in that starting center spot with Kuminga playing on the wing and Dre goes to the bench or something like that? So for that to happen, I predicted we need Kuminga to start, and he has been playing fantastic. And I think that if he continues to play at this level, there's a higher chance for Draymond to eventually accept a bench role. I know, Big, you disagree with that, giving his ego, and it hasn't happened yet. So maybe it's a, hey, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But just looking at the standings to start the league so far, the Warriors are 4-3. Again, I think they probably should be 5-2. They had a bad loss to Portland in there, who is a team that's a lot better than expected. So maybe it's not a bad loss, 2 months from now. But I think the Warriors will still be a team that's in that top 6, clearing the play-in. And I think if Kuminga continues to play this way, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe instead of, hey, keep him in the starting lineup, move Dre to the bench, maybe it's like, crap, he's never going to look this good again. Let's sell.
Yeah. Actually, I love the Trae conversation because it almost sounds like you're pushing. There's two separate narratives for us to follow with Trae Young. Is Trae Young holding this team back from being a top seed, or is Trae Young actually that pivotal?
Mm-hmm.
And if we believe that maybe Trae Young is actually holding this team back, as we said, this is a whole thing about narratives and storytelling. That's a really interesting storyline for his career, especially as Atlanta moves forward into the next season. You say, oh, maybe we don't need him. Now, this is getting ahead of ourselves. This is just a story that we could be developing here with Atlanta, but it's just something to think about. And the Warriors one, hey, Kuminga being a starter and a starting caliber player on a contending team is another narrative that you could say too, that, hey, maybe he's just better than Draymond Green at this point, which is something to consider too. So, which, I mean, he is, but like,
something I just thought of too. We all talked about the Derek Queen trade resulting in the abysmal New Orleans Pelicans giving their pick to the Atlanta Hawks. What if this next month, this is something I just thought of on the cuff, what if the next month the Hawks look fantastic without Trae Young? They know in their back pocket they have probably a top 3 pick with the Pelicans. What if we see a potential sign and trade before Trae Young reaches unrestricted free agency, where he gets an extension but goes somewhere else, kind of like a Carmelo type deal back in the day, and then they draft Darren Peterson, and now Darren Peterson is their new guard of the future to add on to the Onyeka Okongwu, the Zachary Risache, the Dyson Daniels, the Nikhil Alexander-Walker. That sounds like something I'd be very interested in if I was an Atlanta fan.
Add this to the list because I like this. This is spicy, but I like it. I like this idea of, hey, maybe Trae Young is the guy on the outs. Maybe that's what and you can get something else for him too if it's a sign and trade. So
imagine what you can get for him while bringing in Darren Peterson as well. Maybe just more bench players, maybe another pick as well, where you get a role player around him. Maybe you could get a team like Washington who might not be good next year, even though they want to be. And now you have Darren Peterson entering his 2nd year with another top 5 pick in your back pocket to replace maybe Kristaps Porzingis if he starts to go downhill 2 seasons from now.
I like that. It's something that I think we definitely need to watch. I'm kind of on the boat of like, hey, let's see if Trae Young is actually a big piece, and maybe we need to pay attention more to the Hawks because a bad Trae Young but a good Hawks is a really interesting story to see and follow, especially knowing they have this that they have this Pelicans pick. So then to my narratives, I guess there's the Clippers one is something that still needs to take some time to develop. We haven't seen anything there, but the other two that I want to just mention quick is the injuries thing. We've already seen Anthony Edwards get hurt, minor injury there. Luka is already back after his minor injury. But Trae Young out. We're already mentioned about how these star players might be going down a little bit more often, and we're starting to see it happen. And it hasn't happened to the bigger guys, but Trae Young and Anthony Edwards are, two guys on top teams that we thought were going to be there. Now Edwards will be back soon, so it's not like it's a long-term thing, whereas Young's going to be out for a while. We're only 7 games into the season, and we've seen this level of injuries. We've seen players resting already for load management. It's something to take a look at. Like, is this full court press? Is this just intensity of the season now just going to take these guys out early?
Mm-hmm.
So something to just follow right now, as we have. And the other one is the Milwaukee Bucks. Look, if you have not watched this Bucks team, this is not the Bucks of the last 4 years. This is a completely different looking roster. They are playing athletic. They are playing smart. They lead the league in field goal percentage, and even more so, they lead it in effective field goal percentage. Right now, they lead the league in field goal percentage at 52% from the field, which is crazy efficient for a team. Effective field goal percentage, they're at 59%. This team is one of the most efficient scoring teams because they are playing super athletic. They are playing great defense. They look like a contender, and that is behind Giannis, who, small sample size, currently has a 40.8 PER. That number, I'm going to talk about PER. It's a stat that I like a lot. PER is one of my favorite stats because I think it's actually one of the most accurate depictions of offensive production. The record of all time is 32. I don't remember what it is exactly, but it's 32 point something by Nikola Jokic, and Giannis is right behind that as like one of the top 5s as well. He's not going to hold up 40, but that's a insane start. I know there's a couple other guys that are up there. Luka and Wemby are also up there right now, but like Giannis is playing at a peak level. The only thing that's concerning to me about this with Giannis is the load management game. I'm going to say this in my take on load management because there's one thing that I don't understand about this situation of him taking this game off against the Warriors. Now, hindsight bias, they won the game. It's fine. But it is the 4th game of the season. You are averaging 37 and 16 on 70% shooting. Why would you take a game to potentially lose any of that momentum? Like, he came back in the Kings game and did not look as good as he did in the other games. Now, is that the knee? Maybe. Maybe it is. He's also getting older. But don't rest after a good game. Rest after a bad game. Why would you ever ruin any momentum that you're having? So that's something I did not like from Giannis. I did not understand that rest. And it ended up working out because Ryan Rollins is
the GOAT,
the most improved player. I called my shot on him. I don't even think I said it in the pod. I wish I did. Called my shot on him being really, really good. I did not expect him to be this good so far to start off, but they're an athletic team. They can run the full court press if they wanted to. They run the high post. They run all the things that I've talked about. They are a top defense and an extremely, extremely efficient offense right now. Yes, they are 4-2, so they're not near the top because they lost to the Kings, but like they're the 4th ranked offense and the 15th ranked defense. Happens. They are not a great defense, but yeah, they don't have Kevin Porter Jr. for a while right now. He had a meniscus injury. He is going to probably be getting surgery on that meniscus, so he will be back in a couple weeks. But Cole Anthony and Ryan Rollins are good enough where I could say, hey, this team is not going anywhere. This Bucks are not the Bucks you've seen in the last couple of years. This is a 50-win team. This is a 50-win team, and if they can, I think they have to improve this defense a little bit. But they've got, hey, bring Tom Thibodeau in, put him on the bench. Doc Rivers, call him up. So it's a really good team. Giannis, I think right now, odds favorite. He's not the odds favorite for the MVP, but he should be.
He's 5th for whatever reason. That's shocking to me. Shea, Wemby, Jokic, Luka, and then Giannis 5th.
Because he's Giannis and people don't respect him.
Similar to the LeBron effect, those, latter 2010 years.
people got used to what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and also I don't think the rest helped. Like
No.
he should not have rested against the Warriors. That's a big game.
Mm-hmm.
You have to play that game. But he doesn't really get injured, so I don't understand him needing rest this much. I get it. You know, you need to be in top shape for the playoffs, but like, dude, it's October.
Yeah.
Like, it was October, so whatever. Yeah, that's it. I still think this is on pace. I believe in this team to still be a 50-win team, and I still think he's the MVP. I just need to see him do a little bit less resting. So,
I had about 46 wins. You had them at 50 exactly. Okay.
Yep, I'm at 50 wins, and I think they'll be there, and I think he's still the MVP right now.
He'd get my vote if it were voting today.
So, but yeah, I think otherwise, when we take a look at everything else, I think this is it. Or we'll look next week and see if any of our predictions, if these trends continue, if we see any more gambling things, if injuries start to rack up a little bit, if the Hawks and Jalen Johnson can put something together a little bit and see if they can make a run, if the Bulls can continue their dominance so far to start off this season. But yeah, any last notes you want to put in?
No, I'm not sure if Donovan Mitchell's playing tonight, but I'm going to be watching the Cavs and Hawks pretty closely. This will be one of the first games without Trae Young, so it's a good test. Cavs obviously still a very good team, a little banged up, but I'd be curious to see how the Hawks look against a contender in the Eastern Conference without Trae Young, and really could put together the narrative that we were trying to push about, is Trae Young holding the Hawks back, or is he just not playing up to standard and he'll be fine when he gets up to standard? Curious to watch that.
All right. And I will be watching a little bit more Portland, see if they can hold this up. I think we got to take a little bit more watch on Chicago because they're a little bit better than I thought. And yeah, I still want to watch a couple of these other top teams to see if they can put it together. And Joel Embiid. And I guess we got to watch the Grizzlies without Ja Morant. How do they look without him?
Yeah,
So,
and they're playing the Raptors today, so bet the over if you're betting on that one.
yeah, and if that team ends up somehow losing to Toronto and Toronto's defense looks good, then
Or sound the alarm. Yeah.
Sound the alarm. All right. Thank you very much for watching The False Narrative. That will be the end of this chapter. We'll see you in the next chapter.
Jig is up.